These are women who spoke through poetry. They helped to manage money and morale, and they turned culture itself into a battlefield. Now, one of the most remarkable of these is Phillis Wheatley. Now, Phyllis was born in West Africa. She was enslaved as a child and she was brought to Boston. When she got to Boston, she mastered English, she mastered classical literature and poetic form at astonishing speeds. Her poems were not merely artistic achievements, they were actually political acts. Now, this was at a time when slavery was justified by claims of intellectual inferiority, and Phillis Wheatley's work really dismantled that lie line by line. Her poetry engaged Enlightenment ideas, Christian morality, and classical symbolism, and this forced a lot of her readers to confront a massive contradiction at the very heart of the revolutionary cause. How could a nation demand liberty when they were denying it to others? When Wheatley wrote a poem honoring George Washington, he was so impressed by it that he invited her to meet him personally. Now, that moment mattered, and it mattered a lot. Now, this was not because this particular moment erased injustice, but it definitely did help to expose it. Her very presence challenged the boundaries of who was actually allowed to speak in the revolutionary conversation. So, if Abigail Adams argued for accountability within the law and Mercy Otis Warren challenged power through satire and history, it was Phillis Wheatley who expanded the moral horizon of the revolution itself. Then there was Esther DeBert Reed, whose influence was not philosophical, but it was more logistical and no less vital. So in 1780, the Continental Army was struggling with massive shortages and severe morale deficits. So Reed took it upon herself to organize a massive fundraising campaign among the women of Philadelphia. She framed this not as a charity, but this was a patriotic duty. And she got people involved and she did it at astonishing speeds. I mean, my God, women were out there contributing money, clothing, tons of time spent doing whatever they could to help the Continental Army, including but not limited to sewing shirts, raising funds. They coordinated distribution. And Reed even authored a broadside urging women to recognize their political responsibility to the cause. This was not symbolic support. This was not a good hoorah from the sidelines. This was straight up infrastructure. Armies march on supplies just as much as they march on ideals, and Reed's efforts directly improve conditions for soldiers in the field, and this very, very keenly demonstrated that the home front was not passive. It was straight up operational. And these women were not abnormalities. They were part of a larger informal network that moved ideas, money, labor, and influence across all colonies in a time when doing something took a whole lot of effort and everything was dangerous. And I think the expected lifespan at that time was probably like 37 years old. I mean, it was a tough time. Those were some dark days, but each of these women played a different role. Somehow together, though, they formed something extremely essential, and that was continuity. I mean, they got in there, they got it done. It was shockingly impressive. While armies were advancing and retreating and kicking ass, then getting their asses kicked, and it was going back and forth, and their feet are cold and they're very hungry, these women were back home. They were maintaining the households, communication networks, supply chains, public morale. They were helping to shape the stories that people were telling about the war and the meaning that they were assigning to those stories. The revolution was not just a single front. It was this great tapestry with all of these different threads of poetry, persuasion, organization, endurance, and they all were woven together into something resilient enough to actually become a nation. And when we begin to see these women not as exceptions, but as participants that were operating within the limits and possibilities and the gender of their time, the story of American independence grows much richer and it's far, far more honest. Because these revolutions are not sustained by heroes alone, they are sustained by communities, active members in society, and many of their architects never stood in the spotlight at all.